I first noticed them in Chicago, glass panes embedded in the sidewalk. Not decorative, not modern design features, old glass, purple tinted from manganese content, and the kind they only made between 1850 and 1920. The purple happens when manganese in the glass oxidizes under decades of sunlight, clear glass when manufactured. Purple after a century exposed to UV light. It's like a timestamp. These blocks have been here for over 100 years. Thick structural blocks, each one about 4 inches square, set into iron frames, level with the concrete. The frames themselves are works of craftsmanship, cast iron with decorative elements, geometric patterns. Sometimes company names embossed into the metal. Looking down through them, you can see rooms below. Basement apartments, they told me, coal storage, utility access. The glass is thick, sometimes 2 inches, built to bear the weight of foot traffic, ribbed on the bottom surface to diffuse light. From above, they look utilitarian, functional, just old infrastructure. But look down through them. That's when things start to seem wrong. The ceilings were too high, 10, 12 feet, sometimes more. Basement ceilings are typically 7, maybe 8 feet, just tall enough to stand comfortably. But these spaces had the ceiling heights of first floors, of main floors, of spaces designed to be occupied, not just for storage, and the windows themselves. They weren't rough openings cut into foundations. They had architectural details. Decorative ironwork, ornate frames, carefully fitted masonry, the kind of craftsmanship you see on street-facing windows, not on basement utility access, and then I saw the pattern. The same purple glass blocks, the same iron frames, the same architectural style, in Seattle, in Boston, in Philadelphia, in San Francisco, always in the oldest parts of the city, always in buildings constructed between 1850 and 1920. Always looking down into spaces that seemed too finished, too ornate, too intentional to be basements. The official term is vault lights, also called pavement lights or sidewalk prisms. From architectural documentation, vault lights were thick glass blocks set into iron frames in sidewalks and vault ceilings, designed to allow natural light to reach basement spaces. They were patented in the 1840s, became common in major cities by the 1850s. The purpose? To illuminate basement levels that couldn't access natural light any other way. Makes sense, except for one thing. Why did so many buildings suddenly need basement lighting in the 1850s? What changed? The buildings themselves didn't change. Many of these structures were built in the early 1800s, some even earlier. But the vault lights, those came later. Retrofitted, added, installed above spaces that already existed. Why? The answer, when you find it in city engineering records, is straightforward. They raised the streets, deliberately, systematically, across entire cities. In Chicago, between 1855 and 1865, they raised the street level by 4 to 14 feet. The entire city, not over centuries, not through gradual accumulation. Over 1 decade, they lifted streets, installed new sewer systems, and rebuilt at a higher grade. Buildings that couldn't be raised. And there were many, simply had their first floors buried. Or what used to be ground level became basements. What used to be windows became below-grade openings. And vault lights were installed in the new sidewalks above to provide light to spaces that were never designed to be underground. What happened in Chicago is documented in detail, from engineering records and historical accounts. In 1855, the Chicago Board of Sewerage Commissioners decided the city needed to be raised to install a proper sewer system and prevent flooding from Lake Michigan. Engineer Ellis S. Chesbrough designed the plan. They would raise streets 4 to 14 feet above the original grade, build new streets on top of the old ones, install sewers underneath. But what about the buildings? Some property owners paid to have their structures lifted with jack screws. The most famous example, George Pullman raising the Tremont House Hotel 4 feet while guests were still inside. They kept operating during the lift, but most buildings couldn't be raised. Too expensive, too difficult, too risky. So the first floors became basements. From one historical account, building owners who chose not to raise their buildings found their first floors below the new street level, accessed by stairs leading down from the sidewalk. Their ornate front entrances, designed to face the street, to welcome customers, to make architectural statements, were buried. New entrances were built at the raised street level, often to what used to be the second floor. And those buried first floors, with their high ceilings and decorative windows, they became basements. Vault lights were installed in the new sidewalks above to provide light. This is documented. This happened. The city engineering department has the records. Chicago isn't unique. Seattle did the same thing, even more dramatically. In 1889, a fire destroyed 25 blocks of downtown Seattle, the entire commercial district. When they rebuilt, city planners decided, we're raising the streets. Why? Official reason, Seattle's original streets were at sea level. They flooded during high tide. Sewage backed up. Streets turned to mud. The solution, rebuild 1 story higher, 10 to 22 feet higher, depending on the location. So they did. They rebuilt the city with streets elevated 1 full story above the original ground level. Buildings were constructed with 2 street levels, the old ground floor and the new raised street 1 story up. Shop owners operated from both levels for a while. Ground floor for customers who walked at the old street level, second floor for customers on the new raised streets. But by 1907, the city condemned the lower level. Too dangerous, they said. Fire hazard, unsanitary. They sealed it off. The entire original street level of downtown Seattle, storefronts, sidewalks, entrances, display windows, was buried. Literally. You can tour it today. It's called the Seattle Underground. Walk through it and you see original storefronts, complete with their display windows, still intact. Sidewalks that are now below current ground level. Doorways that open onto dirt and rubble where the old streets used to be. Purple vault lights in the ceiling. What's now the sidewalk above, letting in purple-tinted light. The architecture isn't rough, isn't unfinished. These were finished, occupied commercial spaces, built to be seen, built for customers, built for street life, now buried 1 story underground. The official explanation is simple, practical urban planning. Cities needed better sanitation, modern sewer systems required proper drainage, streets needed to be raised to accommodate infrastructure. Perfectly reasonable, except. Why did this happen in so many cities at once? Chicago, 1855 to 1865. Seattle, 1890 to 1907. But it's not just them. Boston filled in the Back Bay between 1857 and 1882. Raised land by 15 feet in some areas. Buildings that existed before the fill had their first floors buried. San Francisco did extensive regrading after the 1906 earthquake. Street levels changed. Original ground floors became basements. Montreal, Toronto, Cincinnati, Memphis all show evidence of street raising during the same general period, 1850 to 1920. This is the same period when maps stopped showing Tartaria, when statues started appearing in museums labeled Unknown Sculptor 19th Century, when the Smithsonian was founded to control artifacts, when the American Historical Association was established to standardize history, when the Committee of 10 decided what children would learn in schools, the same decades when 250,000 children were moved on orphan trains, when hundreds of asylums were built to house those who remembered things differently, and when cities buried their original street levels. Walk through the Seattle Underground and look at what they buried. The architectural detail on these basement windows, ornate masonry, decorative cornices, granite lintels, precisely cut keystones. This isn't utility construction, this isn't rough basement work, this is finished architecture, meant to be seen, meant to be admired, meant to be experienced at street level. Why build it underground? You wouldn't. It was built at street level, and then the street level changed. From the Seattle Underground tour guide documentation, the city rebuilt 1 story higher. What was ground level became underground. They're very clear about this. It's not hidden. It's part of the official history. Seattle raised its streets. Chicago raised its streets. Boston filled in land. Cities across America and Europe changed their ground levels. What I'm asking is why? The stated reasons are consistent. Flooding, sewage, modernization, infrastructure. But look at the scale. We're not talking about raising a street here or there. We're talking about raising entire city centers, burying complete street levels, rendering hundreds of buildings obsolete or requiring massive retrofitting. The engineering effort is staggering, the cost immense, the disruption total, and it happened across dozens of major cities within a 70-year window, all addressing the same problems. Flooding, sewage, with the same solution, raise the streets. Is that normal? Is that how cities typically evolve? Walk through a medieval city that never industrialized, York in England, or parts of Prague that weren't touched by 19th century development. The original ground level is still the ground level. Buildings from the 1300s still have their first floors at street level. No burial, no accumulation, no need to raise anything. So why did every major city that industrialized between 1850 and 1920 suddenly need to bury itself? Here's what the engineering records say. Chicago's sewage problem was real. The city was built on swampland at the edge of Lake Michigan. Streets flooded, waste accumulated, disease spread. Seattle's tidal flooding was real. Built at sea level, the old city flooded twice daily during high tide. These aren't fabricated problems. But the solution? Raising entire city centers by 10, 15, 20 feet? Seems extreme, especially when you consider what it required. Rebuilding every street, installing new utilities, forcing property owners to either lift their buildings, expensive, risky, or accept that their first floors were now basements. Creating a two-tiered city where old street level and new street level coexisted for years before the old level was condemned and sealed. Why not just build better sewers at the existing grade? Why not improve drainage without changing the fundamental elevation of the city? The stated answer? The grade needed to be higher for gravity-fed sewage systems to work properly. Maybe. But I keep coming back to the timeline, 1850 to 1920. The same 70 years when maps of Tartaria disappeared from atlases. When statues lost their sculptor attributions and started appearing as unknown 19th century. When history was standardized by institutional gatekeepers. The Smithsonian controlling artifacts. The American Historical Association controlling historical narrative. The Committee of 10 controlling what children learned in schools. When asylums were built to house hundreds of thousands. When orphan trains moved 250,000 children across the country. And cities buried their original street levels. Think about what that means practically. You're a merchant in Chicago in 1860. You own a building on Lake Street. You've been doing business from the ground floor for 15 years. Your storefront is at street level, large display windows, ornate entrance, carefully chosen location because it catches pedestrian traffic. The city tells you, we're raising the street 8 feet. You attend the public meetings, listen to the engineers explain the sewage problem, the flooding, the health concerns, all legitimate. But then they explain what will happen to your building. The new street will be 8 feet higher than your front door. The engineers walk through your options. You could pay to have the entire building lifted. Jack screws, specialized contractors, months of dangerous work, costs more than most buildings are worth. Or you could adapt. Except that your ground floor is now a basement. Build a new entrance at what used to be your second floor. Install stairs down to your old storefront for customers who want to access it from the new street level. Hope people adjust to the change. Or you could sell, cut your losses, walk away. Let someone else figure it out. Most people couldn't afford the lifting, didn't want to abandon their businesses. So they adapted. Their display windows, positioned at 5 feet high, perfect eye level for pedestrians, ended up at ankle level, looking up at the bottoms of passing feet. Their main entrances became basement access, dark, awkward, requiring customers to descend stairs to enter. And the new street level, 8 feet higher, built with fresh gravel and plank roads on top of the old pavement, became the only street level that mattered. The city installed vault lights in the new sidewalks above the buried storefronts to provide light, to make the buried spaces minimally functional. Within a few years, businesses that couldn't adapt closed. The buried first floors were converted to storage, to coal cellars, to mechanical rooms. Within a decade, new residents thought the city had always been at this elevation. Within a generation, people forgot the city had ever been lower. The buried first floors became basements. Their windows became basement windows. And the architectural evidence that these spaces were designed to be at street level was reinterpreted as unusually nice basement work. Some ambitious builders even advertised it as a feature. High ceilings and basement level, as if 12-foot ceilings in basements were intentional luxury, not evidence of buried first floors. I visited the Seattle Underground, descended stairs from modern Pioneer Square down into what used to be street level. The tour guide was knowledgeable, enthusiastic, well-informed. He explained the 1889 fire that destroyed 25 blocks, the decision to rebuild higher, the engineering of the new street level, all presented as smart urban planning, progressive thinking, solving real problems with bold solutions, and it was all true. We walked through what used to be storefronts. You can see the display windows. Still there. Original glass in some places, frames intact. But they're not looking out onto a street anymore. They're looking into darkness, into the filled-in space where the old street used to be. Above them, purple vault lights dot the ceiling. What's now the sidewalk, letting in filtered purple light. The tour guide points to a doorway. This was a shop entrance, he says. Front door opened right onto the sidewalk. But the doorway opens onto a wall of dirt and rubble now, where the old street was filled in. We walk under what used to be sidewalks. The vault lights above us create pools of purple light. The guide explains. Storekeepers operated from both levels for a while. Ground floor for pedestrians at the old street level. Second floor for customers on the new raised streets. 2 entrances, 2 cash registers, split inventory. But it couldn't last. The old street level flooded when it rained. The city's new sewer system drained everything to the raised street level. The old level became a collection point for water, waste, rats. In 1907, the city condemned it. Too dangerous. Fire hazard, health risk. They sealed the underground level, filled in more of it, cut off access. The storefronts were abandoned. And that's what you're walking through now. Abandoned commercial spaces, complete with their architectural details, their decorative elements, their carefully designed facades, all one story underground. The tour guide shows us walls with ornate masonry, brick patterns, arched doorways. This craftsmanship, he says proudly, shows you the quality standards they had back then, even in basement work. But it's not basement work. You can see it in the design. The ceiling heights, 12 to 14 feet, are residential first floor heights, commercial ground floor heights. The window placements are at eye level for standing adults, perfect for displaying goods to passing pedestrians. The doorway proportions are designed for street entry, wide, welcoming, architectural statements. This was built to be seen, built to attract customers walking by on the street, built for daylight and foot traffic and commerce. And then someone raised the street 12 feet and turned it all into a basement. Walking back up to modern street level, I kept thinking, this is how you erase a city. Not by destroying it, by building over it. You don't need to demolish evidence if you can just bury it under 15 feet of dirt and declare the new level to be ground level. Within 1 generation, the buried level becomes forgotten. Within 2, it becomes myth. Within 3, tourists pay to tour the underground city and marvel at how strange people were to build cities underground. Except they didn't build underground, they built at ground level, and someone else raised the ground. Seattle and Chicago are the most dramatic examples, but they're not alone. Boston raised entire neighborhoods. The Back Bay was Boston Harbor until 1857. They filled it in with gravel from surrounding hills, raised the land 15 feet in places. Buildings that existed before the fill had their first floors buried or required massive modifications. Cincinnati regraded its hills. Changed street elevations by 10 to 20 feet in some areas. Old buildings suddenly had their first floors below the new street grade. Memphis did the same after yellow fever epidemics. Raised streets to improve drainage. Buried original ground floors. San Francisco's downtown was built on filled land and landfill. After the 1906 earthquake, extensive regrading changed elevations across the city. Buildings from before the quake often show first-floor windows at or below current sidewalk level. Montreal's Old City shows buried first floors throughout the historic district. Toronto documented deliberate street raising in the 1850s to 1870s. Even in Europe, Paris, Prague, Edinburgh, Southbridge created an entire underground neighborhood, parts of London, all showing the same pattern, original street levels buried. First floors turned into basements, vault lights installed to provide light to newly underground spaces, all during the same general time frame, 1850 to 1920. The vault lights are still there, in Chicago, Boston, Seattle, San Francisco, Philadelphia. Walk down any old commercial street and look at the sidewalk. Purple glass blocks set in iron frames, looking down into what we call basements. But notice the ceiling heights, notice the architectural details, notice the careful masonry on the windows. Notice that these spaces weren't designed to be underground. They were designed to be seen, to be entered, to be part of street life. And then the streets changed, not gradually, not through natural accumulation, through deliberate civic engineering projects that raised street levels by 10, 15, 20 feet and buried everything that came before. Or dates during the exact same period when everything else about the 1800s was being controlled, standardized, and rewritten. The official explanation is practical. Cities needed modern infrastructure, and raising streets was the best way to achieve it. The architectural evidence supports this. Engineering records document the projects, contemporary accounts describe them, and the results are visible today. But the pattern is undeniable. Every major city that industrialized between 1850 and 1920 buried its original street level, all for the same stated reasons: flooding, sewage, modernization, all using the same solution: raise the streets, bury what came before, all during the same time frame as every other systematic change to history, education, and social control. The vault lights are what remains: purple glass, iron frames, or looking down into rooms that were never meant to be underground, providing light to spaces that were designed for daylight. Still there, still visible, still showing you that the ground you walk on isn't the ground that was always there. So when you walk past those glass panes in the sidewalk, pause, look down, see what's beneath your feet, and ask yourself, why did they bury it? Why did dozens of cities across multiple continents within the same 70-year period all decide to raise their streets and bury their original ground levels? Why is the city used to be lower presented as unremarkable civic trivia instead of a massive, coordinated transformation of urban space? Why did this happen during the exact same period as everything else we've been documenting? The vault lights are still there. The buried first floors are still there. You can visit the Seattle Underground and see it for yourself. The evidence isn't hidden, it's just been reframed. Smart urban planning, Necessary modernization, progressive infrastructure development. But when you see those ornate windows at ankle level designed to catch the eye of pedestrians who would never be at ankle level, when you see ceiling heights that make no sense for basements, when you see architectural flourishes that make no sense for underground storage, you start to wonder what else was buried under the new street level, and why.